Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Trotter. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Wysdom, here with Jay Athia, who's going to run you through our webinar today on the intent performance and what your bot platforms are not telling you. Please make sure your volume is adjusted properly so that you can hear Jay. There is a question tab on the right side of GoToWebinar where you can ask questions anytime throughout. We may save them for the end if there's a lot of them, but if it makes sense to, we'll interrupt Jay and say, hey, can you make sure you talk about this as you go through? So please feel free to interrupt if need be. And we will send you a link with access to the recording so you can rewatch it or forward it to anybody within your organization who may see value in seeing some of the things we're talking about today. So as I said, my name is Dave Trotter. Jay Athia, who is our Senior Director of Customer Service, will be running you through most of the presentation today, showing you our operations center and really showing you, how you can dig into what your bot platform isn't telling you. I'm going to do a short intro on Wysdom. We certainly don't want this to be all about what we do. It's really about intent performance and understanding how you can use data to figure out what problems you need to chase after and figure out where you invest in things that are worth fixing. So we'll focus there. We're going to start with a poll question, and this we're not going to go too deep here. Just where are you on your chatbot journey? So the poll will pop up right now, and if you can answer for us, so select one of the following. So are you entry, i.e. you're not really there yet. You're early. You're in a more mature or more advanced, and really just trying to figure out, where you are in your journey, so that perhaps as Jay goes through the presentation, we can tailor it a bit for those depending on where they are in their journey. So we'll just wait a little bit for some of those answers to come in. So we'll pause for about 30 seconds here as we wait for those to come in.
Great to see some of these responses. Given the nature of the organizations that are attending, I'm not surprised we're seeing a bit more on the mature and advanced stage. So good to see that, and Operations Center certainly will help here. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but
okay,
really helpful for some of the mature bot programs.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll just talk very quickly about Wysdom, just to sort of set up, who we are as we go through. So, really our mandate is we make chatbots smarter. So we work with our customers generally on several different areas. Marketing chatbots. So how do you acquire new customers, and how do you use analytics to make sure that you're maximizing the revenue that you get from your bots? We work a lot with customers who have customer service chatbots. So, how do you keep the customer satisfaction of your existing customers high? And then employee service chatbots. So things like IT help desk and HR, things that increase satisfaction for your employees and increase employee retention. So those tend to be the areas that we work with our customers on. You can see some of the brands that we support now, but our primary role in life is how do we take your chatbot investment and make sure that you get the most out of it and make your chatbot smart. Now, what we have found is there's two real parts of a life cycle in sort of the chatbot journey. There's pre-launch, so how am I going to build? What are the key questions I'm trying to answer? And that tends to be where most of the focus is. And then there's post-launch. Once I've got this up and running, how do I maximize my investment? How do I make it better every day? How do I make sure that my further investments in my chatbot are targeted in the areas that I get the best ROI? And so what we find is that most of the market is based here on the pre-launch side, which is identifying your use case, integrations in your existing environment. And so most of what people spend their energy and their money on is here, and that makes sense. You obviously have to get up and running. We do have a business that focuses on that, so we do consulting on the design and build side, so we're certainly available for that. But we think the key place for us to add value is in the post-launch side, which is once you have a bot up and running, what are you going to do with the data that you have, and how do you analyze that? How do you analyze your performance across channels? You have to look at where am I going next? Where are the things that I can really add value to my customers, employees, and measure the performance of your bot? And that's where Wysdom really focuses. And Jay's going to speak a little bit about that as we go through, and he shows you how we do that. And what we found is, essentially there's three questions that bot managers need to answer. And the first one is, how am I doing today? So when I need to report internally, what's the quality of my bot? What's my customer experience like? How much is automated? And really having running data that I can see in a dashboard that shows me what is the quality of my bot today? Where am I falling down? Where am I doing well? And from that, then you're going to want to go, where do I prioritize? So if I have money to spend in 2023, 2024 to improve my customer experience or improve if it's a sales bot or a marketing bot, improve the revenues I'm driving through the bot, where should I prioritize? Where am I going to get the most return for an investment I make? And so we really use a lot of data to help you prioritize that. And then the other side of it is, how have I performed? And have I got the return on investment that I expected when I started my bot journey or when I made improvements along the way on my journey? Am I getting the ROI I thought I would get? If you are, great. If not, what are the further improvements I might need to make to get there? So that's what Jay is really going to focus on today. And then I think from there, Jay, it's over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, David. And welcome, everyone. Great to see so many great organizations here joining us this I guess Tuesday morning here in Toronto, Canada. What I'll do is I'll walk through a couple scenarios. Of course, we're all here to really focus in on intent performance. But before we get into it, I want to talk about why we built OC. I've been here at Wysdom coming up on 5 years now. I spent all of my time to date helping manage bots for our customers, helping grow them, help them getting more and more sophisticated. And as this has evolved from, 5 years ago, hard to believe it sometimes, a very sort of basic, FAQ style bots using some data from bot platforms to inform where we can improve to where we are now and having something like Operations Center available and allowing us to really hone in on what we need to focus on. And not being sort of distracted by false flags or things we really shouldn't be looking at. And so we had to build OC because to get from 5 years ago to now, like I said, the bot platforms weren't revealing enough about what we should be focusing in on. We'd have some high level metrics. We had some trending. I call it bias, and I'll explain what that means once I get into the tool. But it was very, it wasn't giving us the full picture. So we started building Operations Center to allow us to round out that picture and round out the story and allow us to really hone in on what we need to do. So to talk about intent performance, I'll start with one scenario once I hop into Operations Center where you might see false flags, you might see indicators, you might see metrics that are showing something happening but may not be true. And you need to go to a level deeper to really understand what's happening, and then more importantly, what I need to do about it. So I'll talk through a scenario where if you had done some work and you saw one of the KPIs actually falling, you might get alarmed and you might start thinking, okay, what we did here didn't actually help, and I might need to spend a bit more time and a bit more resources in fixing it. But it's not true. When you round out that picture and look at a bit more of that intent performance, you see that it isn't something worth chasing, and you should actually pivot and look at something else. So I'll hop over here into Operations Center because you're all here for the product as opposed to me talking to slides. So when you log in, you're greeted by Operations Center. The left-hand side here is our navigation. You'll see several sections. An overview of experience and automation. A lot of detail here for conversation analytics, and several other sections around virtual agent performance, customer behavior, and some of sort of the finance and community sections that we have available. Today, I'll focus on these two as I walk through the scenarios of conversation analytics and virtual agent performance. So let me start here in aggregated metrics to set us up. So for this bot, in this date range here that I've got available as a filter, for this brand and these channels, and I'll speak to channels in a minute, and for the filters I have available. This bot at about 600,000 chats for this month has an overall containment rate of, let's call it 21%. Whether or not that's good or bad, it depends on your objectives, but let's establish that the overall bot is performing at about 21% containment. When I flip over to contact reasons, this is really where the magic starts happening. We really need to be able to see four different contact reasons, so different things that my customers are talking to my bot about. Where does that performance vary? We'll see, scrolling over a little right here, even for the top two, so the top contact reason of product information and the second most popular contact reason of general order inquiries, there's quite a difference in containment. So just showing you those top two contact reasons, we see where there's a lot of difference compared to the overall. And that's why it's incredibly important to look at these by contact reasons. I'll explain how they work. So every single bot you have today, irrespective of the channel, so here I've got an Apple, an SMS, and a web chat channel. These could be on 3 different platforms. So web chat could be coming from something like Dialogflow or Azure Bot Framework. Let's say SMS is being powered by an open source by a different department of your organization, by something like a ruse or BotPress, and then Apple or even IVR being from a third platform. All of these platforms, irrespective of the channel, all come in through Operations Center. And it's incredibly important that we're looking at the full conversation. So it's the bot and the agent. So we might get the bot conversation from Dialogflow and web chat, but that live agent is supporting that customer in Genesis. We see the entire conversation. This is something the bot platforms don't have. They give you just the bot side. And if you're looking at the contact center platforms, it's just the live chat side. So in Operations Center, we're taking all of these channels across platforms, live agent and bot, and determining what that contact reason is. This is determined from a wisdom topic model, and we've done this deliberately. The reason is, in your bots, you'll have handling for various intents codified. So let's say in this example, let's say you don't have an intent for cancel order. So your customers today use the bot, and when they ask something about canceling their order, they get a bot don't know, or they get a response back that has nothing to do with cancel order. So a rough match. Conversation analytics, and by using the wisdom topic model, we almost audit how you set up that bot. So we'll determine the cancel order contact reason, irrespective of whether or not your bot's actually handling it today. And then we'll calculate all of the metrics for each of these contact reasons across it. And this is why I called it biased versus sort of de-biased in Operations Center. Your bot platform, in order to report on cancel order, would first even have to recognize that that intent was fired. And if you don't have the intent, it's a blind spot. You have no idea that people are necessarily asking, and you certainly don't know the volume in which they're asking and all of my metrics calculated across that contact reason, which is why it's very deliberate where we've decided to separate contact reasons and the wisdom topic model from your bot configuration. Let me talk a little bit about what we have here, and then I'll jump into the scenario. So like I said, all of these contact reasons are calculated or determined from a wisdom topic model. So here's the first one or the third one here of cancel order. I have my volume. It's the third most popular contact reason across all of my channels, live agent and bot. I've got a bot experience score, so BES, and a bot automation score. So bot experience score of just under 50% and an automation score of just under 10%. What these are metrics that Wisdom's calculated and determined. This is sort of our secret sauce and how we help you identify where you need to address intent performance. So our bot experience score, like its namesake, focuses on 7 different indicators of how the experience of that customer was using the bot. This includes things like sentiment and negative feedback, but also includes bot repetition and customer paraphrasing, among several others. So for example, if the customer has to paraphrase to get the response they're looking for, that's a negative experience. You can imagine how frustrating that is. And that factors into the bot experience score. The bot automation score, I sometimes like to call resolved, but this is sort of a measure of containment. So it factors in whether or not, of course, that customer went to an agent, but several other things around, did they get the right response, the response they actually came to the bot to get it help for? Did they receive a false positive? Did they indicate in any way that they weren't satisfied with the response that they got? And again, 7 factors here to indicate whether or not this conversation was actually automated. So again, we've calculated these as metrics that are part of Operations Center. And all of these are calculated by contact reason. And you'll see if you're like me, you're already scanning down sort of the columns and rows here, but cancel order, the bot automation score of just under 10%, pretty low compared to the containment. Containment already 15%, pretty low, and underperforming the 21% overall, but my automation score will always be lower because it's taking that containment and then adding on several other measures of what I call resolution. Let's continue to scroll right. So again, for cancel order, I now have other metrics around handle time. So this particular case, there's 30 minutes and 37 seconds on average for that user to engage with the bot and complete the chat with the agent. So it's the entire conversation, not just one part of it. So on average, it's taking about half an hour to get resolution for their problem. That gets split out. So about 4.5 minutes here in just a virtual agent or just a bot. 2 minutes waiting for the agent, and then just under 24 minutes here, 23 minutes and 53 seconds of the agent speaking to that customer to resolve. So here to allow us to really pinpoint and say, is my bot conversation too long? Do I need to help improve that experience? Are they waiting too long for an agent, or is it my agent that's taking too long to resolve? Really, you could see, again, if you're like me, or the wheels in your mind are sort of turning and saying, okay, I'm starting to see where problems might emerge. I'm starting to see where there are opportunities to improve my customer experience. A few other metrics here before I get into the scenario. So I have an average agent response time. I have some sentiment scores. So these are based on the actual user messages being exchanged with the bot or agent, as opposed to feedback that they might have left in the survey. And then finally, I have measures of how many handoffs occur on average and the first time that contact reason was detected. So that's sort of OC 101 and orientation of the tool. But let's talk about the actual examples. So I'm going to use cancel order again. And the reason is scrolling right here to show my BAS and my containment again, my bot automation score, my containment. So if I'm looking at my bot platform, and in my experience over the last 5 years, you're measuring containment, of course, right? If you're not, I'd be surprised. You have a measure of containment. Some of them will give you an indication of containment by response or containment by intent. So if I'm just looking at that metric and I'm looking at cancel order again, I see my containment decline period over period. So 22%. The initial reaction is, oh no, right? This is the third most popular contact reason, and it's falling in containment. I'm not doing the right things. I probably should prioritize some effort. I should spend some time, a couple sprint cycles. Let's take a look at the intent performance of the NLU training. Let's take a look at the content or the conversational design and figuring this out. The problem is it's a false flag, and I'll show you in a minute. Almost every other metric here is improving. And so if I just looked at that, and maybe I've got some anecdotes or I've got my bot trainers or managers saying, hey, this is getting worse. Let's spend some time in doing this. I would have wasted my time. I would have spent sprint cycles. I would have spent resources that were all tied on addressing this when everything else around that contact reason is actually improving. And I'll show you. So again, containment fall in here 22%, but my bot automation score is actually increased by just under 21. And that means on average, more people are getting the answer they need. It's a good thing, right? They're getting the final response. They're not getting a false positive. They're not indicating that dissatisfaction with the response. So there's a bit of a trade-off here, but I would take this. I'd rather have more people getting the answer they need, of course, than fewer, even though I'm containing less. My experience has also increased by about 20%. So negative sentiment has been fallen or declined. They're not repeating their question as much. The bot's not trapping them with repetition. So my experience score and my automation score have increased. And if I scroll right, I see that my handle time in my virtual agent has also declined. Although my agent has increased a little bit, it signifies that the bot handling is more efficient. And when users need to get to an agent, the agent will resolve them. So generally, I take this as a positive. And then finally, my sentiment scores are improved as well. So my negative has declined and my positive has increased. So again, if I started with containment and ended there, I would have wasted time. All of my other metrics are improving. And then so overall, I could see that my handling of this contact reason is better. But let's confirm. I certainly want to use data. I want to get into a lot more detail before I make the call on what I want to invest my time in for the next couple sprints. So I'm gonna pivot down here into virtual agent optimization. So everything in contact reasons is based on the transcripts. So the actual conversation happening between the user, the bot, and the agent, and we've determined that contact reason based on that conversation. In virtual agent optimization, it's a very different view. This is data streaming from your bot platform. So these are intents that are actually configured in your bot platform. An Operations Center takes that intent and then calculates the performance of that intent in the in Operations Center. So since we're talking about cancellation, I'm going to search here. So these are my intents, again, from my bot platform that have the word cancel in them. And then now I can scroll right and look at the performance metrics for those intents. I've only got 7, or maybe that's too many, but I've got 7 of them here. And OC is doing some legwork for me to help me figure out whether or not there's a problem with my intent training. So again, retail order cancel. The number of utterances or training phrases in that intent is quite high. This varies by platform, of course. So some of them simply say the more the better, and other ones you can't overtrain because it throws off the balance. But I mean that's sort of for you to decide based on your platform. But here's where it gets interesting. So again, for this intent out of your platform, retail order cancel, OC is telling me that about 1% of the times that this intent is triggered, there's an issue with it. Very low. When I see this, I'd probably move on and go looking for something else, but I want to explain it and what this means. The issue rate is a composite of these metrics here on the right. So false positives, so how many times did the bot respond? And OC thinks it was probably the wrong response. So very few, 38. Did you mean, is platform specific, but it's how many times the bot gives something of lower confidence, often asking for confirmation from the user. Bot repetitions, a terrible user experience, but it's how many times the bot just serves back the same response, even though the customer has tried rephrasing the question. And then training candidates. Training candidates are where the bot wasn't confident enough in giving the response, so it didn't. But OC has reviewed it and said these are likely matches to this intent. So there's 8 times where the user has said something, didn't actually get a response in the bot, but OC thinks that it probably should have, and so it's suggesting what these 8 user utterances are for you to train. So overall, honestly, not a problem here. So let me summarize. Containment's fallen, yes. And if I just looked at that, I probably would have deployed some resources to figure it out. But what I'm seeing is my bot automation score has gotten better, my sentiment's gotten better, my experience has gotten better, my issue rate is very low. I only have 8 training candidates, so 8 utterances that I could use to improve. Out of 19,000 times this was fired, let's not spend time here. This isn't one that we should spend sprint cycles or resources on fixing. So we could have seen where we've gone down a rabbit hole from just looking at containment to actually seeing how that true performance has, how the intents really performed. Now I'll go the other way. I'll go the other way where you might see something. Let me actually set it up here in a slide for you because it sometimes helps. So in this case, let's look at containment for an intent and then actually find where there's issues worth fixing. So instead of getting a false flags where there's a problem, I'm now going to use something, dig deeper and say, yes, there is actually a problem here. I need to fix it. Heading back over to OC, and this is how I'd find problems. I'd use OC to sort. I'd use OC to filter. I might decide, let's look at web chat. That's where the majority of my volume is. Or that's the one where I know there might be some bot platform changes or updates, or maybe I've done a migration and this is where I want to filter. For now, we'll keep it all, but I'm going to sort this column of experience score. So clicking that a couple times, I now sort by decline. So I'm looking for areas where I can improve, and then specifically today looking at my experience score. So scrolling right over here, I'm looking at volume. So I want to find the contact reason that has the largest decline in experience and still has substantial volume. So you probably already saw that this particular one called order delivery issues, pretty big in terms of volume and also a pretty big decline in experience score. So let me highlight that over here. So my bot experience score from month over month has actually declined by about 25%. So my bot experience score was, 95, almost 95% in the previous month, now closer to about 70. So it's declined by 75. So I found something I want to focus in on, and now I'll look at some other metrics to confirm whether or not this is something I need to spend some time fixing. My automation score has actually fallen quite a bit here as well. So declined by 27% month over month, pretty large. But here's where if you didn't have any of these other metrics, you probably would have moved on. I certainly would have, right, in pre-OC days. So my containment's actually increased 58.8%, so almost 60%. If I saw this 3 years ago before OC, I probably would have, patted everyone on the back saying, hey, great job, we improved our containment by 60% for order delivery issues. We were at 7% before, now we're at 11. Let's find something else, we did a great job. The problem is when I'm looking at all of these other metrics, it's going the opposite way. My automation's fallen, so fewer people are getting the response they need. My experience has fallen, so they're repeating more often. The bots trapping them with a lot of repetitions. The users indicating that negative sentiment towards the conversation. Scrolling right here, I can confirm some of that. Although agent wait time has fallen and handle time has fallen, everything else here around sentiment is also decreased. So a lot less negative. A lot less positive sentiment as well, even though negatives declined a little bit. But it's something here that I need to learn more about. My containment's increased a lot, but I'm seeing experience and automation fall. If I click in, I'll get a little more detail. So I've now taken the order delivery issues contact reason, clicked in, and gone to this more detailed page. My key metrics here are available as tabs to click. So I'll use this to see if there's any anomalies that are driving any of the big changes. Containment rate, it's pretty flat through the month. It is increased from the previous month, but during the month it's generally good. And then my positive sentiment, you can see generally declining month over month. So nothing here jumping out. So I start there and then I go into related topics. And I'll explain how this works. Imagine your customer has called you or opened up the chatbot to talk about order delivery issues. We all know they don't still write that and then leave it, right? They don't just say, hey, I've got a problem with my delivery. They're looking for something else. They're looking for compensation. They're adding context around what type of issue. Is it a delay? Is it something damaged? Did they not actually get one of the items in sort of the basket that they ordered? Related topics helps expose that. So the primary reason for contact is order delivery issues, but there's several other things that might bring up in that conversation, and that's all listed here. So the most common related issue is delayed order. Perhaps not a surprise, but about 2,900 chats. I know it might be hard to see the little tooltip, but trust me in the number. 2,900 chats here. Out of all of the order delivery issues, were also related to delayed order. The second most was, some complaints. So it is people that sort of said, what are you going to do or how do you help me? But a bit more generic. And then my third one here is order delivery timeline. I do see a question. If you don't mind, pop it into the chat. I've got some help here, and they'll collect all of the questions and we'll cover them in a few minutes. I do see the hand up though. Thank you. And then a few, and then several others. So the way I would use this is I've clicked order delivery issues. All of my transcripts now show up. So I've got all of my conversations, again, end-to-end, user, bot, user, agent here. So I'd start by now looking at a couple of these. It's unreasonable to go through thousands, but just reviewing a couple reveals a pattern. So delayed order delivery issues, I can read through. There's a couple here around, the user talking about a problem, and they end up escalating, and then the agent helps resolve. And the same thing, the second one, the agent help resolve. So there's a lot here. Nothing yet is emerging, but I'm getting some hints. I'm getting some hints that there's containment problems, and some of them might be related to delivery timelines and delayed orders. So that's where I'll pop into transcripts to really help gather evidence and what's going on. So my transcript search here is available for all of the contacts, all of the conversations for this contact reason of order delivery issues. I can search for keywords. So I can search for delay and where the customers actually refer to delay. I'll back out. I might look for a conversation ID. But what I'm going to do is, if you remember the problem, containment's increased, but my experience has fallen. So I want to filter to where I'm only looking at contained chats, and I want to look at the ones where my sentiment score is negative. And this will help narrow that list down. So we went from about 17,000 total chats for this contact reason, now down to about 540. And if you have time to review 540 chats, all the power to you. But really, you don't need to. You go through a few, now that we've gone to a list of low sentiment or negative sentiment and contain, review a couple of them. And what you'll see is very quickly, I'll zoom in here, the customer asks something about expecting a delivery tomorrow. The bot responds, the user clearly says, no, this is not what I asked about. And they basically leave and say, you know what, forget it. They don't escalate, they don't leave feedback. So even though my metric is showed they've contained, you could see they got nowhere near the answer they needed. And what they likely did was probably call in and cost you more money than it probably would have in just getting a chat. Oh, I backed all the way out. But let's go back into transcripts. Contained, I'll give you another example here. Negative sentiment. There's this one here. Same thing. So they're checking on the status of the order, wondering when it's going to be delivered. Bot spits out, all of these responses. User says, no, I didn't get the response I need. The bot, for whatever reason, didn't understand the no, which is unfortunate. And then it sort of continues, and you can see the customer just sort of says, this is dumb. They didn't escalate. That's the key. They stayed in the bot. They were contained, but very clearly a very poor experience. So this is where, to summarize kind of what I've shown you, if we saw just containment for this contact reason, we would have patted ourselves in the back, move on, spend time on something else. Instead, by using OC, looking at other metrics, actually going through related topics, looking through the transcripts, all in a couple minutes, right? Like we started and wrapped up this scenario in about 5 minutes. I'm able to say, yes, there is a problem. My bot is not actually responding the way I need it to, and containment is just a false flag. We need to spend time here, and we need to dedicate a bit of resources in actually getting this bot improved for this particular contact reasons. I'll flip back. So those are my two scenarios. I'm going to wrap up. I know there were some hands up, so we'll get to those questions. But sort of in summary, I only showed you a couple of these in Operations Center. I showed you conversation analytics. And again, those are contact reasons detected by the actual conversation happening between the bot and the agent, or sorry, the user and the agent, and the user and the bot. And then I showed you a bit of virtual optimization, which is data streaming from your bot platform. And when you put those two together, you have sort of the audit section, which is conversation analytics, which is decoupled from how your bot is actually configured, but almost auditing what are your customers asking about versus what versus how you're handling them. And then virtual agent optimization, actually evaluating the performance of how you set up your bot. I saw something, just as we sort of wrap up and get to the questions, I saw something really interesting on LinkedIn yesterday. Someone had posted, I wish I remember the name because I would have given them credit on this webinar, but they said something like, setting up your bot and managing it over time, the key is not setting up the bot and the intents based on your business drivers, right? Yes, it's important. Yes, that's a place to prioritize. But what's crucial is using what your customers are asking about to set up your bot and improve your bot. So conversation analytics is really about that. What are your customers saying? What are your prospects saying? How are they phrasing them? What are they asking about? What is that experience in the bot, whether voice or chat? And then using that to prioritize how you improve the bot or improve the handling in the bot, improve the bot or add new content. Not just your business owner saying, hey, I've got a new product coming out in a couple weeks, and you make sure the bot's handling it. Guess what? It's launched, and sort of 6 people are in it every day. Instead, the time would have been better spent in what are your customers actually saying and what's that experience actually like, and using that to improve and prioritize enhancements. Okay, I'll stop there. We do these webinars often every month, so we'll touch on a few of these other sections in a subsequent webinar. but let's use the last 5 or 6 minutes to get to those questions. So use the chat if you've got it here, or my help here, Heather's joined to help us sort through some of those.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Jay. So there are a couple of questions coming in. One of the attendees, it was a question from earlier on, and I answered it, but I think it might be useful for you to go a little bit deeper. And it was on BES and BAS, because that's kind of core to our product, and it's one of the things we talk about a lot. So you did mention it, but the question was, what is BES and what is BAS?
Yeah, happy to go into that again. So I'm going to show you a slightly different screen here. So this is a bot automation score, bot experience score, BES, bot automation score, BAS. We created these at Wysdom because we needed a way to better track the user experience and whether or not the user actually got an answer to their response. You saw the problems with containment. It gives you a false flag sometimes, and it gives you, confidence sometimes where it's not appropriate. So we created BES and we created BAS. They have 7 different signals each. BES accounts for things like whether or not the bot was repeating itself a few times, where the customer tried to rephrase their question to get a response, whether they had negative sentiment in the conversation, whether they abandoned. There's 7 different factors for BES. And so we calculate this overall. So for this bot, we're sort of seeing the experience scores 85% overall. And then we also calculate them by contact reason, because the experience score varies quite substantially, like I showed you in the contact reasons page. And then bot automation score is analogous to resolve. Did the user actually get the answer they needed? So it'll always be lower than containment, because the bot automation score takes whether or not the user was contained, so whether or not they actually, whether or not they didn't get to an agent or stayed in the bot, and then factors in other signals around whether or not they got a response that was meaningful enough to their question, whether or not they abandoned the chat, whether, again, they had some indication of negative feedback, and several others. So 7 different factors that we're using to calculate these scores. So they're a key part of Operations Center, and they help you really separate those false flags and the noise coming from some of the other metrics like containment, and really hone in on where we need to improve, or maybe not, or help prioritize something else. I hope that helps. We do have a blog article on Wysdom AI where it goes into a lot more detail if you're interested.
That same person did have another question, but didn't type it in. So I don't know, Ezra, if you're listening and you have your other question, feel free to type it in and I'll read that off to Jay as well. But there are a couple of other things that have come up. We've got time for maybe one more before we do a wrap up. So the question was, you talked about live agent data. So the question is, how do I see it? Is it combined with chat? Can I filter it to see it by contact reason?
Yeah, great question. By default, it's combined. So every of these contact reasons is determined from either the bot portion or the live agent person. And I'm sure all of you on the call have seen where the user comes into a chat, simply says, give me an agent. The bot routes them to an agent, and then they proceed to actually tell them their problem. That problem in Operations Center is then picked up from that agent conversation. So we're looking at everything end to end. Right now in this default view, it's all combined, but I'll use these filters. So let's say I wanted to only look at channels that are live agent only, or look at cases where there's a bot and agent, a couple different pivots. I could do that in here as well. It's just the default view is only, default view is everything, live agent and bot together.
Good, thank you. So we are going to wrap it up now. So maybe if you just want to flip to the last slide there. So just for everybody on the call, so thank you very much for attending. Some little follow-up actions there. Of course, we're marketing, so we have to also promote our blog. We like to get people engaged in our conversations. And I can say for those of you who are on the line, we've got a special offer out there for you. So we're going to follow up, and if you take the time to book a meeting with us and go into a little bit more discussion about your specific environment and your specific challenges, then we're going to plant some trees for you. So 25 trees for anyone who does book a meeting with us. So hopefully we'll get you having some conversations there. So with that, we'll wrap it up. The presentation, the recording will be shared out, so you can listen to it and share it with your colleagues as you need to. And of course, we're around, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining. Bye now.